You ever feel like something shifts in the air before anything actually happens? That's what it felt like that night. Just this subtle, electric charge in the silence, like something was waiting. I'd stayed late plenty of times before, but this one felt different. Maybe because I wasn't the only one. It was nearly 9 p.m., and the office had emptied out hours ago. The open floor plan was dark except for the corner by the windows where I sat, hunched over my screen, tweaking layouts for a campaign that had gone through 12 rounds of client feedback. I was trying to care less, but I couldn't. I needed this one to be good. The only other light came from across the room, Matt's desk. And yeah, I'd noticed. Matt was one of the newer hires, marketing analyst, Ivy League brain, sharp dresser, naturally quiet. The kind of guy who somehow kept to himself without ever seeming awkward about it. I'd worked with him a few times already. Just enough to know he was crazy smart, slightly sarcastic when he wanted to be, and stupid good-looking in a way that felt unfair. Strong jawline, thick lashes, that unshakable calm. Even his tie knots were symmetrical. Who the hell does that? I didn't think much of him at first, but over the past couple months, that started to change. Slowly. Like every interaction added a new detail I couldn't stop revisiting later. Like the way he said my name, flat, but warm. Or how he'd always tilt his head slightly when he was genuinely listening to someone. I found myself watching him too often, and hating myself for it a little. He hadn't said anything yet that night. Just sitting there, typing in short bursts, scrolling, typing again. I glanced at the time on my screen, 9:07 p.m. Fuck it. I stood, stretched, and casually strolled over to his side of the floor, hoping to play it cool and not like I'd spent the last hour thinking about it. He looked up when I got close, one earbud still in. "Didn't think anyone else was still here," he said, voice even. He pulled out the earbud and leaned back slightly in his chair, eyes on mine, calm, observant. "Long day? Client wants a miracle, and I'm fresh out," I said, trying to sound breezy. "You?" he exhaled. "Had to rerun the numbers for next quarter. Something's not adding up. Figured I'd get it done now while it's quiet." There was a pause. Then he added, "You always stay this late?" I shrugged, leaning against the divider between our desks. "Sometimes. It's easier to think when no one's around talking about fantasy football or reheating fish in the break room microwave." That got a small smile out of him. Just a quick flicker, but it stayed with me. We didn't speak again for a few seconds. Just silence, with the buzz of the AC filling it in. The windows behind us reflected our silhouettes in the glass. Me leaning, him sitting, a weird symmetry between us. "You hungry?" he asked suddenly. I blinked. "What?" He nodded toward his backpack. "I have chips and a granola bar. It's not gourmet, but it's better than starving." I grinned, surprised. "Are you offering me half a granola bar?" "Maybe," he said, smirking now. "Depends on if you're any good at poker." "Poker?" He reached into his bag and pulled out a tiny travel deck. I had no idea why he had that in his work backpack, but I was too intrigued to care. "5-card draw," he said, laying it flat on the desk between us. "You win, you get the chips. I win, you owe me something better." "What's better than stale office snacks?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. He held my gaze, unblinking. "Surprise me." That was the moment. The shift. I felt it click into place, subtle, but undeniable. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about cards or food or staying late to work. Something else was happening. I sat down in the spare chair next to his and took the cards from his hand, our fingers brushing for a second longer than necessary. "All right," I said, heart suddenly louder in my chest. "Let's play." The first thing I noticed when I sat down was how quiet it really was. That deep, nighttime office silence where the only things making noise are the HVAC vents and your own heartbeat. The city lights outside were just reflections on the tall glass panes, like we were inside a snow globe of fluorescent ceilings and carpeted cubicles. Matt shuffled the cards like he'd done it 100 times. He didn't talk much while he did it, but I could feel the difference in the way he was looking at me now. Less formal, less like a coworker who kept to his spreadsheets. more like someone who had been waiting for a reason to lower the mask. "All right," he said, dealing 5 cards each. "1 round. You win, you get the chips. I win, you owe me something better than a granola bar." I studied my cards. 2 pair. Not bad. "You always gamble with your coworkers?" "Only the ones who look like they haven't eaten since noon." I laughed. "You're not wrong." He set his cards face down and looked at me. "So what exactly do you do when you stay this late?" "Besides starve. Mostly try to finish things I didn't get done during the day," I said, rearranging my cards. "And occasionally, question every career choice I've ever made." He smiled, just barely. Relatable. I took a risk and discarded 1 card. He did the same. I gave him 1 and myself 1, then we laid our hands down. He had a straight. I had nothing now. "Damn," I muttered. "Chips are mine," he said, reaching into his bag and tossing me the unopened granola bar anyway. "But you still owe me." I took it and gave him a look. "What, you keeping a tab now?" "Maybe." His tone was teasing, but it carried something else too. Something under the surface. Not heavy. Just present. That feeling again, like something unspoken, had entered the room with us and wasn't planning to leave. I leaned back in the chair, still holding the granola bar in my hand. "All right, name your prize then." Matt turned his chair slightly, so his knees were angled toward me. "I haven't decided yet." "Dangerous game," I said. He shrugged. "Maybe." For a few seconds we just sat there, not saying anything, and it wasn't awkward. It should have been. We barely knew each other outside of work, but it wasn't. It felt easy, natural, but also like standing too close to a fire. That subtle heat creeping in, too slow to notice until it's suddenly everywhere. "You always this quiet?" I asked him after a beat. Matt looked at me, and the way he did it made my stomach tense a little. Not aggressive, not even particularly intense. Just steady, thoughtful. "Not always," he said. "Depends on who I'm around." Something about that answer made my throat dry. I tried to think of something else to say, something easy, neutral, but nothing came out. So I opened the granola bar instead. The sound of the wrapper tearing felt way too loud. "You live nearby?" I asked finally. "Brooklyn," he said. "Fort Greene. That's like, what, 40 minutes from here? On a good night. And you're still here?" He leaned back and gave me a look. "You're still here." Touché. I nodded, biting off a piece of the bar and chewing slowly. It tasted like cardboard and cinnamon. "So, is this your thing?" I asked, half joking. "You stay late, challenge coworkers to poker, steal their snacks?" Matt laughed. Really laughed this time. It wasn't loud, but it was the first time I saw his shoulders loosen. "I don't usually talk to anyone after 6, he said. "You're the first one who didn't bolt for the elevators the second the lights started flickering. That's because I forgot to care about work-life balance." "I think I forgot too," he said, quieter now. Something about the way he said it felt like more than just a throwaway line. Like maybe it wasn't just about work. I looked at him again. Really looked this time. His sleeves were rolled up, and I could see a faint scar across his left forearm. He caught me staring and raised an eyebrow. "Rock climbing accident," he said, tapping the scar. "You climb?" "Used to. Not so much now." "Why'd you stop?" He paused. "Long story. We left it there. But that invisible thread between us, whatever it was, got a little tighter." "All right," I said, suddenly standing. "I think I need to stretch my legs. You want a soda?" Matt blinked, surprised. "You're buying?" "There's a vending machine down the hall." "I'm not that generous." He smiled. "Yeah, all right, I'll come with." We left the office together. The hallway outside was even quieter than our floor. Lights buzzed faintly overhead as our footsteps echoed down the corridor. I didn't say anything as we walked. I could feel the tension shift again, but not in a bad way. More like anticipation, or maybe just nerves. I hadn't expected this night to turn into anything. And yet here I was, walking next to Matt like we'd done this 100 times. He stopped in front of the machine, peered in, and frowned. Nothing but diet options. "Welcome to hell," I muttered. We both stared at the sad lineup of drinks for a second. "Want to split one?" I offered, half joking. Matt looked at me. Really looked. "Sure," he said. I don't know why that simple response made my pulse jump. I fed a crumpled dollar into the machine, pressed a button, and watched the can clatter down. Matt took it when I handed it over, cracked it open, and took the first sip, then passed it back to me. His fingers brushed mine. That was the first time I felt it. Something shift inside me. Small, but real. A spark. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. We didn't say anything else on the way back. Just walked side by side, the shared can of soda between us. Back in the office, it was even darker now. Just our two desk lamps, pools of soft light in a sea of shadow. Matt sat back down in his chair. I didn't. I stayed standing. My hands were in my pockets, heart still beating faster than it should. "You heading out soon?" I asked, not really wanting the answer to be yes. Matt looked up at me. "I might stay a little longer," he said. "If you're sticking around." I nodded. "Yeah, I'll stick around." We didn't go back to our desks right away. Instead, we ended up standing near the break area, leaning against opposite counters like two guys killing time in a 24-hour diner. Except our version had a flickering fridge light and half a bag of communal stale pretzels. Matt took another sip of our shared soda, then handed it to me again without a word. It had stopped being about the drink a while ago. I took it, drank, and set the can down carefully, like breaking the silence too. Suddenly would make whatever this was disappear. "You ever do this before?" I asked quietly. He tilted his head. "Stay late at the office?" "No. This, hanging out, with someone from work." Matt didn't answer right away. His eyes dropped to the floor for a second, then back up to me. "Not really," he said. "You?" I shook my head. "Nah. Usually I'm the get in, do the job, leave unnoticed type." He gave a small nod, like he got that. "You don't seem like the unnoticed type." I smiled a little. "Maybe I've just been around too long." "How long have you been here?" 4 years. 5 in January. "That's longer than I thought," he said, almost like he was recalibrating something. "Yeah. I'm basically a human filing cabinet at this point, full of outdated design templates and petty office grudges." Matt smiled. Not a laugh, but real. "I like that you're not fake," he said. "You don't pretend to care about shit you don't." That caught me off guard more than it should have. I shrugged. Faking it takes too much energy. We lapsed into silence again, but not the awkward kind. It was weirdly comfortable. Familiar, even. Like we were already on the tail end of a long night together, where everything important had already been said. "You dating anyone?" he asked suddenly. It was so casual that I almost missed it. The way he said it. Calm, quiet, like asking what time the subway stopped running. I didn't answer right away, mostly because my brain froze, trying to decode the question. Was he making small talk? Was he prying? Was it that? "No," I said finally. "Haven't in a while." He nodded slowly. Didn't press. "You?" He looked at me, then away. "No," I waited, thinking he might explain. He didn't, just stood there, one hand resting on the counter, thumb brushing absently against the edge. He had this way of standing that was all balance and quiet energy, like he was always a step away from moving. Except he didn't. He stayed still. I cleared my throat. It's weird, right? Talking like this in an empty office, like we're not supposed to be here. Matt looked around, then back at me. Feels like we're in a different place, like this isn't real life. "Yeah, it's kinda nice," he added. I nodded. "It is." There was a long pause. Then Matt said, almost too quietly. Do people know? At work? It took me a second to realize what he meant. I looked at him. About me? He nodded. I don't know, I said. Maybe. I don't really talk about it. You should. That surprised me. Not in a bad way. Just, it wasn't what I expected him to say. You, you figured it out? I asked. Careful. He gave me the smallest smile. You're not that subtle. I laughed under my breath. Guess not. Matt looked down at the soda can, spinning it slowly with his fingers. I wasn't sure at first. Then I started hoping I was right. Those words, I felt them land somewhere deep in my chest. Hoping? I repeated. Yeah. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable this time. It was loaded. Not bad, but not casual. My heart was suddenly pounding. I stepped forward, not even thinking. Just a slow, instinctive shift that closed the space between us. We weren't touching, but we were close now. Inches. He looked up at me. His eyes flicked to my mouth for half a second. Barely noticeable, but enough. Matt, I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. He didn't move away. He didn't answer either. Just stood there, watching me, waiting. And then, I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was both of us. But the next thing I knew, we were kissing. Soft at first. Careful. His lips warm against mine, his hand resting gently on my waist, like he wasn't sure how far to go. I responded without thinking, tilting my head, pulling him closer. His other hand slid up, fingers brushing my jaw. It didn't feel like a first kiss. It felt like something that had been simmering for months and finally boiled over. When we pulled apart, we didn't say anything. Just breathed, close enough to feel it. His forehead touched mine for a second. Then he whispered, "Told you I was hoping." I laughed, soft and breathless. You could have said something sooner. Maybe, he said. But then we wouldn't have had poker. We stood there in the office kitchen, still close, still touching, as the vending machine behind us hummed and the city kept moving on the other side of the glass. I wasn't thinking about work anymore. I was thinking about him, and about the fact that I wasn't ready for the night to end. We didn't talk for a few minutes after the kiss. Not because it was awkward, just the opposite, actually. It was like neither of us wanted to break whatever that moment was. That strange, peaceful quiet where everything felt suspended. The world hadn't caught up to us yet, and maybe we both wanted to keep it that way. Matt stayed close, fingertips still lightly hooked on my belt loop, like he wasn't ready to let go. I wasn't either. His eyes searched mine, like he was making sure I hadn't changed my mind. I hadn't. Eventually, he leaned back just slightly and said, "Well, that was unexpected." I snorted softly. You bring a deck of cards to work and challenge me to poker, and this is the part that feels unexpected? He smirked. Okay, fair. We stood there, and I could feel something else settling in now. Not tension, exactly. More like vulnerability. The kiss had cracked something open between us, and now that it was out there, it wasn't just about the heat or surprise of it anymore. Now it was real. I leaned against the counter, glancing at him sideways. So what does this mean? Matt sighed, not in a bad way, just the kind that says I've been thinking about this longer than I've admitted. I don't know, he said, but it doesn't feel like something I want to ignore. I nodded slowly. Same. We let that hang in the air. I watched the way his hands moved. Nervous now, a little less composed than usual. He started fiddling with his tie, loosening it, undoing the top button of his shirt. It wasn't flirtatious. He looked tired. You okay? I asked. He glanced up. Yeah, just, I didn't plan any of this. Me either. He paused, then added, I've only kissed one other guy before, years ago, and it didn't mean anything. But this... He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't have to. I understood what he meant. This was different. I looked at him for a long second, then quietly said, "Do you want to go back to my desk?" Matt tilted his head. "That a euphemism?" I laughed. "Not yet." He smiled, genuinely this time. The tension eased a little. We walked back together, the hallway somehow darker now, even though nothing had changed. The quiet buzz of the city outside felt louder in contrast to how still everything was inside. At my desk, I sat down in my chair. Matt stood for a moment, looking at me, then pulled over the spare chair again, placing it right next to mine this time, instead of across. Our arms touched as we sat. The screen on my computer had gone to sleep. I jiggled the mouse, not because I needed to, but because I wasn't sure what else to do with my hands. Matt leaned over slightly to look at the screen, his shoulder brushing mine. "Let me see your work," he said. I blinked. "What?" He gestured toward my project files. "I want to see what's been keeping you here so late." Okay." I opened the latest campaign design mock-ups. He leaned in, scrolling through them slowly. Studying. Not just pretending to look. He was really absorbing it. "You're good," he said quietly, almost to himself. I felt a flush creep up my neck. "Thanks." "No, really. You have a point of view. That's rare." I laughed, nervous. "Matt, we just kissed. You don't have to butter me up." He turned to look at me, serious now. "I'm not." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. We sat there like that for a while, him looking through my work, me watching him, not quite believing this was actually happening. Not just the kiss, but the closeness, the ease of it. The way it all felt like it had been building toward this for longer than either of us realized. Eventually, he leaned back and stretched, letting out a low groan. "That chair is criminally uncomfortable," he said. "You get used to it after 4 years." He looked at me, and there was something different in his eyes now. A weight, maybe. Or a decision. "What happens tomorrow?" he asked. The question lingered in the air between us. Not dramatic, not heavy-handed, just honest. "I guess we go to work like usual," I said. "Pretend nothing happened, or we don't pretend." He nodded slowly. "Would that be weird?" "Only if we make it weird." Matt leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What if I don't want this to be a one-time thing?" My throat tightened. "Then we don't let it be." He looked at me again, for a long moment. "I like talking to you," he said quietly. "And not just tonight." I smiled, softer now. "You're not so bad yourself." Matt chuckled, then rubbed the back of his neck. "You wanna maybe go get a real drink sometime?" "Not from the vending machine," I nodded. "I'd like that." It was that simple. And that real. We didn't kiss again that night. Not in the office. It wasn't the place. But we stayed a little longer. Just talking, sharing stupid stories, swapping work gossip, sitting way too close for two people, just hanging out. And when we finally packed up and rode the elevator down together, the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was a promise. We didn't know what would happen next, but we both knew it wasn't over. The next morning felt surreal. Not because anything dramatic had happened overnight. Matt and I hadn't gone home together or stayed up texting. We hadn't even exchanged numbers, which hit me as kind of absurd when I realized it. But the memory of the kiss, the closeness, the silence we'd shared, it hung over me like the scent of someone's cologne after they've left the room. And there he was the next day, at his desk at 9:02 a.m., same perfectly ironed shirt, same calm, unreadable face, like nothing had changed. But when I passed by with my coffee, he glanced up, and we locked eyes for half a second longer than usual. That was enough. Something had changed. We both knew it. All day, I felt it. That electric undercurrent every time we passed each other in the hallway, or found ourselves in the same meeting. Our interactions were normal on the surface. Just two coworkers, professional, composed. but everything beneath it felt different now. Charged. There was a moment around 2 p.m. where I caught him looking at me from across the room. He didn't look away this time. He just held it, slow and steady, until I finally looked down, heart pounding in my chest like I was back in high school. After work, I lingered longer than I needed to. Part of me wondered if he would too. But he left right on time. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe he just needed space. Maybe we both did. Still, when I got home, I checked my email out of habit, and there it was. One unread message, subject line, "You forgot to collect your poker debt," from Matt. I stared at it for a few seconds, then opened it. From Matt Rivera to Alex Kim subject, "You forgot to collect your poker debt. Hey, just wanted to say, last night was unexpected." But in a good way. If you're not completely over it by now, I'm free Friday. There's a bar in Fort Greene I like. Chill, nothing fancy, let me know. And I'm still technically owed something better than a granola bar. I didn't wait more than a few minutes to reply. From Alex Kim to Matt Rivera. I think I already paid you with an illegal soda sharing arrangement, but I'm willing to negotiate. Friday works. Text me XXXXX4X backs A. He texted that night. A simple, got it, with a thumbs up emoji that somehow made my stomach twist in the best way. Friday couldn't come fast enough. When it finally did, I spent more time getting ready than I wanted to admit. I wasn't trying to impress him, at least that's what I told myself. But I still changed shirts twice. Okay, 3 times. He texted when he was outside. I grabbed my jacket and stepped out into the cool December air. He was leaning against the wall next to the entrance of the bar, hands in his coat pockets, dressed down but still somehow looking like he belonged in a damn GQ spread. "Hey," he said, voice easy. "Hey." We both smiled. Inside, the bar was dim and warm, all exposed brick and soft lighting. We grabbed a booth in the back. It wasn't loud, but it had just enough ambient noise to make the silence between us feel intimate, not heavy. Matt ordered whiskey. I went with a gin and tonic. It was quiet for a few minutes after our drinks came. Not uncomfortable. Just full. Like there was too much to say and neither of us wanted to rush it. Eventually I said, "So, no poker deck tonight?" He grinned. Didn't want to risk losing again. "You didn't lose last time." "Didn't I?" he said, voice low. That hung in the air a little longer than I expected. I took a slow sip of my drink. "You've been hard to read this week," I admitted. He nodded. "Yeah." I wasn't sure if we were pretending it didn't happen, or if we were both just waiting to see what the other person did first. "Definitely the second one," Matt chuckled. "Okay, good." We started talking then. Really talking. Not just work stuff, not just surface-level get-to-know-you questions. He told me about his last relationship, which ended over a year ago, mostly due to distance and silence. I told him about the one I'd been in before moving to the city, how it fizzled out after I buried myself in work. He asked if I'd ever been in love. I told him I wasn't sure. Sometimes I think I was, but maybe I just liked the idea of being in love, I said. Matt nodded, sipping his whiskey. I get that. He didn't ask anything else after that. Just reached across the table and let his fingers brush against mine for a second. I didn't pull away. We stayed for another round. Then another. But we weren't drinking fast. Just letting the hours stretch out, as if neither of us wanted to admit we'd eventually have to leave. At some point, he leaned in and asked, "Can I kiss you again?" My answer was a quiet yes. It wasn't rushed. We didn't even care that we were in a public bar. It wasn't some grand makeout session. Just a quiet, meaningful kiss, shared in the soft light of a booth no one else seemed to notice. When we pulled apart, I could still feel his hand on my knee, gentle but firm. His thumb made slow circles through the fabric of my jeans. "This feels real," I whispered, surprised at myself for saying it. It does, he said. And it was. After that night at the bar, things shifted, quietly but noticeably. We didn't talk about what we were. There were no labels, no grand declarations. But suddenly we were texting during the day, sharing playlists, sending each other memes during meetings and glancing across the conference room table when one of us laughed too hard. It was subtle, careful, but real. It was like there was a thread running between us, invisible to everyone else but pulled tighter with every little touch, every glance, every inside joke. We kept things mostly outside the office. A few dinners. A Saturday afternoon wandering a used bookstore in Williamsburg, where Matt found a vintage edition of some obscure poet I'd never heard of, and bought it for me because the guy wrote like someone who's been in love and hated it. That night, I read half the book in bed, with Matt asleep beside me, one arm thrown across my chest like it was the most natural thing in the world. But here's the thing about work relationships. No matter how discreet you are, people notice. Not because of what you do, but because of what you don't do. The space you leave between you that used to be wider, the silence that used to be filled with small talk. It started with little things. A coworker making a passing joke about Matt's sudden social streak. Another asking me why I was smiling at my screen during lunch. Nothing pointed. Nothing cruel. But the awareness was growing. And maybe that's what made Matt pull back a little. It started subtly. A delayed response to a message. A rain check on dinner because of a deadline. Less eye contact in the office. A couple of nights where we didn't talk at all. I didn't push. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I waited. Until one Thursday night, about 3 weeks after that first kiss, I found myself in the office late again. It wasn't intentional. I just had edits due, and the building was warm and quiet like always. Familiar. Comforting. Then I heard the elevator ding. I looked up, and there he was. Matt stepped out like it was just another night, like we hadn't drifted slightly in the days since the last time we'd been alone together. He walked in without saying anything and sat across from me at the break table. I closed my laptop slowly. "I didn't think you were still here," he said. "Didn't think you were coming back," I replied, quietly. He didn't answer right away, just looked down at his hands. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I've been in my head." "Yeah," I said. "I noticed." He glanced at me. "I didn't mean to pull away. Everything started feeling really real, and that kind of scared me." I nodded. "You don't owe me anything you're not ready for." "It's not that," he said quickly. "It's the opposite. I want this. I want you." I froze. He looked right at me. "I've never dated a guy before," he said, his voice low. "You're the first person that's ever made me even think about it seriously. And I guess I didn't realize how much I was bracing for it to fall apart." "It doesn't have to," I said. "But you have to meet me halfway." He nodded. "I know, and I want to. I think I'm still figuring out how." I stood up, moved toward him slowly, and sat down beside him. Not touching. Just close. "I don't need you to have it all figured out," I said. "But I need to know you're still showing up." He looked at me then, really looked. And in that moment, I could see all of it. The fear, the desire, the uncertainty, the hope. "I am," he said. "I am showing up." And then he reached out and took my hand. That was the first time he ever did it, without hesitation. We sat there in the office after hours. Again, our fingers laced together, the hum of the vending machine buzzing in the background. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't some huge turning point. It was just honest. And for the first time, I realized we weren't just sneaking moments anymore. We were building something. After that night, something shifted. Not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet kind of way that matters more than anyone realizes. Matt started staying over a couple nights a week. He'd show up with takeout, his laptop slung over one shoulder, and we'd sit side by side at my tiny kitchen table doing work until one of us inevitably got distracted. The rhythm between us became something that felt lived in, normal, intimate without trying too hard. We weren't hiding, but we weren't announcing anything either. It was ours. And it was working. But the truth is, things that work privately don't always translate so cleanly when the rest of the world catches up. It started with a team off-site. Some bigwig from upper management had decided we all needed to bond in the woods for a day. One of those forced camaraderie retreats with trust exercises and awkward lunch table small talk. It was laughably corporate, but Matt and I carpooled there together, and I guess that was enough. People noticed. Not everyone said something, but they didn't need to. One guy from finance, Cody, the kind who always made everything a little too bro-y, nudged me during the icebreaker activity and said, "So you and Rivera, huh? Should we be expecting wedding invites?" He said it with a smirk like it was a joke. I smiled like it was one too. But later, back at the office, Matt was quieter than usual. We didn't talk much the rest of that week. He was in meetings, I was stuck in production hell, and even though I told myself not to overthink it, I could feel the space between us stretching again. Until finally, Friday night, he came over. It was cold out. He didn't text first, just buzzed the intercom like he used to. I opened the door and he stood there, hands in his coat pockets, that same unsure look in his eyes that he'd had the first night we kissed. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Yeah." He stepped inside and took off his coat. I could tell something was on his mind. "You want a drink?" I asked. He shook his head. "I need to tell you something." That landed heavy. I braced myself. Matt sat on the edge of the couch and looked at me like he didn't quite know how to start. "I had a conversation with HR." My stomach dropped. "Okay," I said slowly. "Are we in trouble?" "No, not really. It was informal. Someone mentioned we might be involved. I think Cody said something stupid to the wrong person." I clenched my jaw. "So now what?" "They just wanted to remind me of company policy," Matt said. "Nothing crazy. Just that if anything gets serious, it should be disclosed." "Serious," I repeated. "Is that bad?" He paused. "No, but it made me think. About what this is. About what I want." I held my breath. "And?" He looked at me, eyes soft. "I want this. With you. I don't care if HR knows, or if Cody's a dick, or if we have to jump through hoops. You've been steady through all of it. And I've been scared." I blinked. My chest was tight in the best way. "I'm tired of being scared," he said. "I'd rather figure it out with you." I crossed the room before I even thought about it, sat beside him, and took his hand again. "You're not the only one who was scared," I admitted. "But yeah, let's figure it out." He let out a breath that sounded like relief. Then he leaned in, pressed his forehead to mine. "I don't care about the office. I don't care about rules. I just care about this." That night, we stayed in, ate leftovers, watched some terrible sci-fi show he insisted I'd like. And when he fell asleep on my shoulder, I didn't move. Because for the first time, I wasn't worried about where this was going. We were already there. It's strange how something that started so casually, a few words after hours, a shared soda, a quiet kiss, could end up changing so much about how I moved through the world. Matt and I eventually told HR, no drama, no scandal, just a quiet meeting where we disclosed our relationship and signed a few forms. No one gave us grief. Honestly, most people had already figured it out. Turns out it's hard to stay low-key when your entire face lights up every time you glance across the office. After that, things got easier. We didn't flaunt anything. We didn't have to. A hand brushing as we passed each other in the hallway. Lunches together. The occasional commute home where we'd lean against each other on the train like gravity was the only thing holding us up. But the real shift happened one night in February. It was one of those brutal winter evenings. Wind like razors, slush coating every sidewalk, city lights turning gray snowbanks into something almost cinematic. We had just gotten off work late. Again, deadlines were looming and neither of us had the energy to go anywhere else. So we did what we always did, grabbed takeout and went back to mine. Matt was quieter than usual that night, not distant, just thoughtful. He stood at the window with his drink in one hand, watching snow drift past the streetlights. I was curled up on the couch with a blanket, flipping channels aimlessly. Then he turned around. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course." He walked over, sat down next to me, closer than usual, his leg pressed against mine under the blanket. "Do you ever think about the night we first kissed?" I smiled. "I think about it more than I probably should." Matt nodded, his eyes fixed on mine. "I've been thinking about it too, how simple it was. Just the two of us. No plans, no expectations, just quiet." "Yeah," I said. "That night changed everything." He looked nervous now, fidgeted with the hem of the blanket. "I've been thinking," he said again. "I don't want this to be temporary. I don't want it to be just something that happened because we were working late one night." "It isn't," I said quickly. "I know," he said, "but I want more." My heart was thudding now, not in fear, in something else. Hope. "What kind of more?" I asked. He reached out, took my hand in his. Squeezed gently. "I want to keep showing up. Even when it's messy. Even when work is insane and life gets loud and we can't always figure everything out. I want to be someone you can count on." I stared at him for a second, then pulled him close and kissed him. Slow, deep, sure. When we pulled apart, he leaned his forehead against mine and whispered, "I love you." I laughed, breath catching in my throat. "Jesus. About time." "Yeah?" "Yeah," I said, smiling. "I love you too." We sat there in the silence, the kind we'd come to know so well. The kind that wasn't empty, but full of everything we didn't need to say. Because we knew. What started as two guys left in an office after hours became the most important thing in my life. And the truth is, I'm glad I stayed late that night.